I will start off with a very brief intro of myself and the Good Growth Company, and then Jasmine, you can give your intro, and then we will jump into tackling some of the questions as people roll in. So, my name is Daniel. I am the founder of the Good Growth Company. I'm a marketing advisor and brand strategist, and I love focusing on social good organizations, whether that be businesses, educational institutions, nonprofits, charities of all kinds. And my focus is on things like brand messaging and making sure that everything is aligned. So you can ultimately uh, reach your audience and resonate with them and amplify your impact. I am joined by Jasmine Rain, and together, both of us have done quite a few sessions. We just did one on Monday talking about AI for impact, and we actually have an AI for impact session coming up that you can learn more about through our website. Jasmine, why don't you go ahead with an intro?
Hello, everyone. I'm coming at you from India this evening slash morning on your side. So I run an incredible little organization called Rain and Co. We help impact leaders and nonprofit organizations scale impact through focusing on the sales, marketing, operations piece with a really heavy focus on AI to support with automations and supporting organizations, specifically small organizations. And I know there was a few questions submitted specifically around small organizations, so it'll be good to dive deeper into that and how AI can support you in streamlining. Um, but really, the core of what I do is supporting the meaningful work in this world that deserves to be seen and multiplied. And we can't do that without proper sales, marketing, operations systems, and processes in place. So my incredible team does that. We work with a variety of sorry, it is getting late in Indian Standard Time with various organizations in a few different industries, but specifically all focus on the same goal, which is kind of the humans, animals, planet. We need the planet. We need it all to thrive in order to build a sustainable future. So today I'm really excited to dive into this. The holiday giving season is something that is I'm so generally passionate about because I know for a lot of organizations, it makes up a large percentage of the annual donations revenue that comes in. Honestly, regardless if you're for profit or not for profit, especially if you're like for a lot of D2C brands, so the direct to consumer brands, this is the heaviest hitting quarter of the year. So I'm really excited to dive into some questions and support, which is what we're seeing, what we see working, what's not working, and potentially even like kind of live coach here on the call to support you with what you're working towards. Because if you haven't started planning, yes, you're definitely very behind, but it doesn't mean that you can't get to where you need to be as long as you really get focused and intentional about the goals that you're trying to achieve and really find quick wins immediately. So we can dive into that more in today's session.
Awesome. Yes, that's definitely an exciting time. And uh, by the way, for those of you who are also looking at things like Giving Tuesday campaigns, we do have a session coming up specifically focused on Giving Tuesday as well, which I'll share more details. I'll share more details about that, but it's exciting because it's with Canada Helps and Giving Tuesday, the actual organization that kind of oversees this. So, the Global Day of Giving. That being said, we don't want to focus everything just on one day. We are going to talk about all types of holiday giving and fundraising for this season. So, with that being said, I will jump into our first question, which we have submitted earlier today, which is when is the best time to start reaching out and what are the best channels to use? And I'm assuming that when we say reaching out, we're talking about potentially sponsors, but let's go with donors for now since we're talking about the holiday giving season. So, Jasmine, what are your thoughts on that? When's the best time to start reaching out and what are some of the best channels to use?
Well, I think this is a really specific, this is specific to the donor segment that you are trying to target. So which organization was this submitted from? Because it'd be good to give an example of like how this can be applied
Yeah,
based on the
this one.
organization.
Yeah, this one was submitted by Eco Schools, which is a Canadian organization.
Okay, fantastic. Um, So I actually see that someone is here from Eco Schools. Would you be interested in a little bit of live back and forth? I know your camera's off, so feel free to say no if you're not interested. But I just think it'd be interesting to maybe dive a little bit deeper, so we can actually support you with some like real action items you can take from this call.
Yeah, if you're willing to come on camera, awesome. I know a lot of us are multitasking, but feel free.
Yeah, sure, that'd be great.
Hi there. Hey, what's your name?
Teresa.
Teresa, great to meet you. First of all, love what you do, so that's fantastic. I'm glad you're here. So I guess when you say when to start outreach, like what has your holiday giving season looked like to date? What are
Well,
you usually looking? What's your goal?
sorry, just to be clear, I don't think it was, I think it was my colleague who submitted the question. So it wasn't me. I don't typically work specifically on, like it was my colleague Jose, who's part of the comms team. But so we're obviously a national environmental certification program and a charity organization. We've trying to kind of look into individual donor giving and like coming up with some strategies around holiday giving, but that's really not our kind of main, like where we get most of our funding from.
Right.
So it's something that we don't, I think we're just trying to think, we always try and think of like some kind of strategy for individual donor giving around the holiday season, but it's definitely not our kind of main focus. So any advice or thoughts that you have for how we can kind of position ourselves would be really useful.
Cool. Okay, great. Well, who is kind of the persona that you're going after that would be an individual donor? Like, are we looking at parents? Are we looking at teachers? Is it anyone who is like supportive of environmental justice in the education system? Just want to get a little bit of a sense of how we could frame what the outreach, when to start outreaching, what the best channel could be for them.
Yeah, so teachers are kind of the main users that interact with our program, but as we know, teachers are already donating a lot of their time. This is a voluntary program that, so really the teachers donate time, resources, and as you know, there's a lot of um, workload pressures for teachers. So we are not targeting teachers for donations. We would be targeting potentially like parents, um, anyone kind of interested in environmental learning and promoting environmental learning within schools, and supporting like student leadership, that type of thing. So definitely kind of parents and community members would be our uh, donor base, not the typical user of the program who already kind of donate a lot of time and resources.
Great. Yeah. And I see an opportunity where it's like those potentially younger people who maybe have graduated post-secondary are now working kind of as young professionals who have a little bit of extra income and are passionate about this kind of work. And maybe we're part of an eco school growing up because you guys have been around for quite some time, considering that they might have been involved, been engaged in a program and might now want to give back. Um, I'm immediately thinking just because I happen to specifically work with a lot of nonprofits in the education world, just because I'm so passionate about it. And something that's coming to mind actually is the fact that World Teacher Day is coming up in like 2 weeks. And potentially there's like an engagement campaign that you could start in like that week of October that leads into kind of the November calendar of like, the actual campaign of like where the CTA is actually a donation ask. That being said, what I think is really interesting is like you can use this storytelling campaign, which obviously works really well across Instagram, Facebook, and also LinkedIn. Specifically, if you're going to be targeting any kind of like professional to our parents, like there's a beautiful storytelling angle right there. And engaging them to like share their memories of like teachers that inspired them, or like teachers that went out of the way or above and beyond, those who were impacting community in other ways outside of the classroom, to kind of start a conversation that really helps with engagement, sharing. Because again, it's really like focus on the visibility piece and then move that into a more like a larger campaign storytelling piece in November, considering that you kind of have that like 1 week, like the Giving Tuesday week. Yes, you're going to see a huge jump in donations, but because also we're Canadian, considering that Black Friday is still big, or in like Giving Tuesday, like that, that weekend is still a big chunk of donations come in Canada, but we actually see a lot more come in during the actual holiday week. And I have actually a stat here that I pulled, that, or maybe I don't have the exact number, but nonprofits actually see a surge on December 30th and 31st, because it's like those last 2 days to be like, oh gosh, I didn't do my giving. And like everyone's home, everyone's full of turkey, and they're trying to figure out what to do with themselves. And it's like this beautiful time to engage in a storytelling piece that allows them to invest in their values. So I think that might be a really great window. And I'm seeing a lot of nonprofits, specifically Amnesty International. If you're curious about a nonprofit that is absolutely doing incredible things in the LinkedIn world, check out Amnesty International's LinkedIn. I know it's a little bit of it's a different, world that in terms of the content that they're producing, but there is a lot that you can learn from the way that they're approaching it. And a lot of nonprofits are actually seeing incredible momentum on LinkedIn, specifically because we're finding people who are we're targeting people who are actively on a social platform, because anyone who's using LinkedIn regularly uses it like daily. You can ask Daniel and I and a lot of the founders that we're working with to support them with that kind of content creation. They also see a lot more engagement. It's easier with the algorithm. And of course, it's an opportunity to be really segmented in terms of how you might be talking to teachers versus young professionals versus families. So
And
that's my quick spiel on what that could look like.
this has been amazing. I've been like furiously taking notes. Thank you. And I don't want to take much of your time, but I did just have a quick follow-up question about just in terms of positioning ourselves as an organization, it's not well understood that we're a national charity organization. Like typically people think that we're part of a school board program or like a government program. And so I just wondered if you had any thoughts on like kind of positioning yourself as being a national charity that you can donate.
Yeah. Yeah, I can jump in. I think that is something that I noticed from the website is that obviously, you're very present in schools and school boards, and that's who you deal with. But just like schools themselves are always trying to fundraise, because not everything is covered from the government. I think it's a great way to push this and say that, if this is something that you want to see more of in our schools. I love the line that said something like on your website, something about supporting environmental leadership in Canada. It's more of like this higher level thing. Like if you value, our environment, it starts with schools, and we exist to help kind of bring this to actually take place where it's not otherwise covered in schools, not otherwise covered in the curriculum. So kind of showing that there's almost a gap without you, so that people understand that like, hey, this is not just, built in by default. And so you make it free, right? Like you can play on the fact that there's all kinds of challenges in the school system. You offer, some free programs for publicly funded schools. Like I think that's great to supplement so that people understand. It's similar to, there are other institutions that are very much in your boat where people think that they're 100% funded, but actually, they do have to do their own fundraising to keep themselves going. And I think yours is just positioning as like this amazing value add that, hey, not all of this stuff is just part of the school system. And focusing on that it's innovative, right? Which it is, based on what I've seen.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate this. Thank you.
Absolutely.
No problem. Yeah.
Daniel and I are the ultimate team. We love doing this.
I think that it's a unique situation because you don't already have like a lot of generic giving campaigns going or running throughout the year. So when it comes time to this end of year, there's like a two-part process, right? There's like the repositioning of like, here's who we are, here's what we do. And then, by the way, this is the time period in which we're trying to raise funds for XYZ, right? And people love if it's if it's tied to a specific thing, like X amount of students will benefit, or we want to have, X number of new schools onboarded, or whatever it is that quantifies it for people so that they can understand that. And the good news is that you have a lot of existing stats that you can work with, about what your current impact has been, but always show people like where you're trying to bridge to. So you've had, 300 and something schools this year. You want to be able to get to this number of schools in 2026. This is why we're fundraising at this year. And we want to continue to scale that.
Something I've seen work really well too is like breaking it down. Like we need X amount of people to do X action so that people understand like, oh, that's reasonable. I can be that one person. I've seen that work really, really well. Even though it's so simple, it just helps people understand how they can make an impact through X dollar amount and giving them that like specific dollar amount of what that equals. And you kind of have this opportunity to build that credibility again of like, this is what we do and why it matters and why you should be part of it by kind of sandwiching this idea of like something that helps with mass engagement. Like maybe it doesn't have to be like millions of people or thousands of people. It can be like just starting to get your existing community to share and support the engagement and support the algorithm, and then use the tail end of that kind of hot period to reposition yourself because now you have new eyes looking at you and your existing community looking at you again because they've engaged in something fun like sharing their favorite, a teacher that's impacted their life, just as a quick example. And then they're reminded of the incredible work you do and why they followed you in the first place and feel inspired to take action, knowing that in the back of their mind, they're already thinking about who am I going to give to this holiday season? And you're right there, ready for them.
That
Yeah.
makes sense. And Laura had just shared in the chat that there's many people that want climate education in schools, not just parents. And I think that's what's important. Like Jasmine had asked, like, the very first question is about who you're targeting. And I think that's really what that is like, right? Besides, like what is the profile of the person who cares about this and why is it something they care about? I would probably, again, like not necessarily tie it into like the exact holiday season, but perhaps beforehand, saying that you're preparing for next year, preparing for the 2026 programs, right? Making it time-based certainly helps. But I don't think you need to specifically say it's holiday because if you haven't traditionally done it as a holiday, it's not like people are, expecting that to be the case for this year. Awesome. Were there any other kind of follow-up questions that you had, or should we jump to some one of the other questions?
No, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Feel free to ask any follow-up questions you'd like in the chat as well, because we are still
Yeah,
here.
I get excited. Yeah.
Yeah, we're here, and it's great to have it's great to have momentum with kind of getting on a roll with the answers. And the reason we do these sessions live is because it can help other people who have joined as well. All right, we'll jump to the second question, which is for a very small organization, they have two people. They're asking, what are our tips on how to fundraise with only a small team of two? And I believe this question comes from an organization called Together Project. They've actually attended some of the Good Growth webinars in the past, and they connect refugee newcomers and volunteers to try to help build stronger communities. So they have like a matching program. They basically match volunteers with newly arrived refugees, and they're in Toronto, Vancouver, Moncton, Winnipeg, Mississauga. So that being said, they're a small team. And when you're a small team, I'm assuming that most of your time is spent actually executing and running the program. But that being said, Jasmine, are there any kind of tips that you would give them or things that they should think about at least at this point?
When it comes to small teams, because I think the misconception here is that like two people can't have an impact, and absolutely they can. Is really dive deep instead of going wide. So finding like where are we seeing the most momentum? How can we continue to iterate on what's working there? So for example, something that like just to give an example from another client case study. During a campaign window where they actually didn't have any strategy in place and they were like, we need to hit X number. How the heck are we going to do it? And also, I really advise that and if you're listening to this and you're haven't gotten kind of clear on where you're headed with your holiday campaigning, please make sure that you have a number in mind. Like, what is the actual dollar amount that you're looking to raise? Because it's easy for us all to get lost in like thinking about a campaign and thinking about a strategy. But if we don't have exactly the core outcome, like the tangible the quantitative and qualitative data that we want to, or outcomes that we want from the campaign, is really hard to build something that's going to work. So one is getting really clear on what this team wants to accomplish throughout the holiday giving season, and then diving deep on the opportunities that are available for them. So for example, with another small team that I work with, what we identified for them during a campaign window where they were just like, we need to raise 30,000 and we have no idea how we're going to do it. I was like, great, let's do it in 40 days. Awesome. Let's figure this out. But what we really identified is that they had like, they had like 6 champions. Like that's a small number. It's like, okay, we need to reach 30,000 and we got 6 people who are like hardcore dedicated to this organization, will literally jump off a bridge. They will do anything to support them in their momentum, which is so, so powerful. And I'm sure all of us have at least a few of those people in our community that are really like, we'll go the distance whenever we ask them to do something. Maybe they could be board members, advisory board members, maybe they're volunteers. Like we always can find those kind of quick wins in a sense with these incredible people that are part of our ecosystems. And with this organization, what we did is we doubled down on leveraging, instead of focusing on mass visibility and, breaking things up into smaller, not like numerical chunks and trying to figure out, how to segment on ads or et cetera. I was like, here's how we're going to optimize a small budget. We're going to dive deeper with peer-to-peer fundraising. And I know that's like peer-to-peer fundraising, I think, is like the thing that you either love or you hate. I know, but when you have those champions, those are the people that are going to, like, when you have the one person that believes so deeply in your vision and mission, when they can bring their community in to support them with a peer-to-peer goal, it's really not that hard to convince because they're so already organically passionate and probably have been sharing about the organization here or there indirectly, and have people in their community who are like, oh, I've actually never donated to this cause, even though I know, Daniel loves that organization so much. He posts about it all the time, but I've never thought that I should support him in this mission. I totally see that, I trust Daniel, so I'm going to trust that if I donate my $100, it's going to go to something meaningful. And so instead of just like being like, hey, you're my 6 people, can you double down on your peer-to-peer fundraising goal and each raise, $5,000? Sure, we can do that. We can also go a step beyond and be like, what can we do as an organization to support you in leading an incredible campaign over the next 40 days? Give them copy, give them templates, give them curated custom things, whatever's going to support them in making them the incredible leader in their community to bring community together and help you reach your goal. That works 10 out of 10 times when you identify the right people and you provide them with all of the assets and resources they need to be successful. So how do we do the heavy lifting for those who we know are going to follow through, instead of worrying so much about doing all of the things and hoping and praying that they're going to work? So when you're with a small team and you've got a small campaign window, dive deeper into what works. And that's usually champions, leaders, volunteers, community members in your ecosystem that you can invest kind of like time and energy wise to see kind of the donations come through to reach your goal. That's my biggest recommendation. Daniel?
That is an awesome way of looking at it and kind of creating these advocates or ambassadors, right? Where you're able to really extend your reach. We have a response there saying that's so helpful. We're super happy to answer any follow-up questions that you might have, since again you are here live. I'm always thinking, from a brand perspective, I'm always thinking about how we can position this and make it something that people can easily grasp, right, and digest. So, for example, obviously, you have this matching program, but for it to be very like, almost productized, right? Like, for example, like you're gonna do some kind of welcome home campaign or welcome home kit, right? Like, what is it that someone can almost purchase? I talk a lot about, thinking of your giving as almost a product or a service that someone would subscribe to, like a membership or something like that, as opposed to just, throwing a certain dollar amount at your organization. So if you had created some line items where people can give at different levels, right? Different kits, different programs where they can buy in. People love to do that, right? The other thing is, I know you're a small team, but if there's anyone you can partner with that's willing to also donate a percentage of their proceeds or sales, I'm a big advocate for that. So, for example, because the welcome home, because the newcomer thing, one of the things that I've seen other organizations do is tying a lot of it to food, right? And gathering, making it about that kind of community. Are there local restaurants in each of the cities that you operate programs in that are willing to, host something where they give a percentage of their sales for that day or that week, right? Just looking at really creative ways where guess what? You don't have to be there. You don't have to run this. You don't have to like host an event, but leaving it up to the businesses that are there to potentially, do some kind of proceeds and support, and you can help promote it from wherever you are. So I would look at that just because, again, I'm there's infinite ideas for fundraisers, but because you're a small team, we want to be like extremely practical. So Jasmine's idea about the peer-to-peer thing and getting other people to be advocates for you. And then for me, just recommending that you try to find ways to one, brand it so it's very digestible, and two, leverage other communities and businesses that can be an advocate for you as well. Is it Jenna Lee? Is that how you pronounce your name? If you have any follow-up questions at all, from the campaign and what you're thinking of doing, let us know. We're also happy if you're sharing like ideas that you are planning or things you are thinking about. We're happy to kind of provide feedback on that as well. Awesome. No problem. Wishing you the best of luck with your campaign and your fundraising. Okay, we will move on to another question that was submitted from a different type of organization. I love that we have such a diverse mix of organizations here. So the next one is from a hospital foundation. And they're looking to us, Jasmine, for a novel campaign idea that they can try. The hospital itself is called Fraser Health. I think hospitals are the one example that I was kind of referring to when I was addressing the very first question today, which is people think that hospitals are just government services that are fully provided, but actually hospitals have to fundraise for the vast majority of I believe their equipment. Like there's very specific things where like they actually are fully in charge of fundraising. And I think in that case for Fraser Health, looking at ways that you can specify exactly what it is that you're providing, and why this is so necessary and why it's not, already covered by the government. Because we think, at least in Canada, that we have free healthcare and everything's good. So Jasmine, if you had any comments on Fraser Health and how they can kind of like a novel or creative campaign idea for an organization like them.
It's a really big question to ask, just because there's so little I know about what's worked, what's not worked, who their champion donors are. Like I almost would feel like in order to come up with something really like novel, you would have to think of like you kind of want to put your donors into buckets. Like who are our champions, for example? Who are recurring donors? How have we, what has been like the most successful way to acquire new donors? What do we know about the cycle of new donors coming in at this time and becoming retention donors, like or monthly donors, like recurring donors in the sense? And also what their goal would be. I'm assuming this is specifically for the holiday season. So like, what is that goal? I think that, let me brainstorm a little bit more. Daniel, do you want to
Of
play with this
course.
while I ingest my own questions to myself?
Of course, but it is about asking those questions, right? I think when I looked at Fraser Health, like it seems like there's many hospitals that are part of this, right? So right away I look at that vast amount of stories that are available, right? Like there's there's Burnaby Hospital, there's Surrey Memorial Hospital, there's Langley, like there's a lot of hospitals that seem to be kind of part of this Fraser Health Authority. From my understanding. But I think that even if that's not the case, like what is it that's unique to this community? When I go to the Fraser Health website, I really don't see anything about donations. So I'm not sure if there's kind of like a separate page or fundraising site that you have, but I would love to be able to take a look at that. Again, I don't know if the individual who submitted this question is actually on the call. If you are, please message or say hello. That being said, people need practical awareness of things that they can actually support, and breaking that down. a lot of times hospitals have like a very big like capital campaign or capital project to build new facilities. That's tough for individual donors, right? In that case, I would recommend making some really great partnerships in the corporate community and seeing how you can, align from that perspective. Yeah, in terms of like really cool campaigns, like I would think of some kind of challenges that you could do, right? Are there any challenges that you could run? Are there any, kind of competitions where you can get the community involved and feeling like it's not just a one-off, here's my $25 or my $100, but here's like something that I can really work towards getting schools involved, right? Because every school, of course, has the, local hospital that they will rely on as a community. People love that gamification of it, right? If there's like a platform where people can kind of, have teams and track that, I think that's really huge. And then another one would be partnering with existing groups in those communities. If there's like, I don't know, sports teams or clubs or community centers where you can do something specific in there. Jazz, did you have something to add as well? Yeah, no problem. Um, I think the hyper local focus is really important in a situation like this, because I am located in Toronto, Canada, for example, right? But it's not something where I'm going to be, as someone who's in Toronto, it's not something where I'm inclined to necessarily donate to, one of the hospital in one of these smaller towns or cities in BC. But that being said, it doesn't mean that I would never support it if there's not a very impactful case. I think that's what we have to do is like find those compelling stories. I mentioned at first a list of all these hospitals. What are those really creative and unique stories that you can pull from? Because that is how teams are going to or individuals are going to be able to want to support and be drawn towards it. Um, and last thing I'll say is like again, there's tons of stories you can do. You can run a massive storytelling campaign, but look about like what is it exactly about Fraser Health that your mandate of like community well-being, inter-community connection, like what is it exactly that people will all be kind of drawn towards, and you can stay away from like the more complex health related issues or tasks because people want some positivity, I think. That's what I
Yeah,
got. That's what I got.
absolutely. Absolutely. I'm sitting here trying to think like, okay, how can I come up with some like genius idea right now on the spot that would be helpful? But I actually think that when it comes to a moment where you're looking at your team and you're like, what do we do? That's the time where you need to ask your community. You need to like leverage your community to build kind of a conversation around what are they looking for? What like we these are some ideas that we've thought of. We'd love to know if you would love to participate in this, or what are your thoughts? What is the thing that you love about the way that we provide our healthcare services specifically, targeting them per segment of the type of different sectors within the hospital, what they offer in terms of their healthcare facilities, et cetera. That's the opportunity that I feel like so many nonprofits don't take advantage of. We do not ask enough questions to our audience. We're so busy trying to think like, what can we do next to support them and engage them and bring them in? But when we bring them into the conversation, that's when we see real momentum. And that's also when they see how much we value them. That's when we build real retention with our donors. So I'm going to leave my novel idea, especially because, again, like I can't answer, I would love to be able to wave a magic wand and really answer this, but being so honest and authentic, there's a lot more questions that I would want to ask before I'm able to just come up with something that's really going to make sense for this specific journey that this hospital is on, and what a bigger goals and vision is, specifically with end of year, and also how do you use end of year to make 2026 absolutely brilliant. So when we are out of ideas, when we're stuck, when we're not sure what to do, leverage our community, leverage the ecosystem to really understand what might work, and also ask them what's not working so that there's an opportunity to play with all of it and curate something that's really in alignment. And that way, when it does go into launch mode or we iterate, the community is so much more engaged because they got to be part of it. And that's so, so special. So.
That's huge, right? Because they feel that kind of local ownership over it. But that being said, you want to find those things that are unique. Like, for example, if your community has a big focus on arts, right? Let's say there's a lot of like local artisans. Like, I don't know what each individual community is known for, then there's something you can do. Like, is there like some kind of arts partnership program? So we can come up with unlimited amounts of ideas, as Jasmine referred to, but we want them to be like targeted and custom. So thank you so much for your question. Number one thing I'm going to say, no matter what your organization is especially with something like Fraser Health, where you have so many hospitals, infinite amount of stories to pull from. That's where I'll leave that. Okay, Eco Schools has another question here. They're asking if we have any resources or suggestions to help with figuring out the best value proposition for your campaign. So donate X to support X, or other things along that line. I can jump in, Jazz.
You can go first, Dana. Go for it.
Perfect. I think what's really important is that your campaign doesn't have to, should not be as generic as like everything that you do as a whole as an organization. It should be very focused so that I can understand, if I do this one thing, I'm going to contribute to this and I'm going to feel like I'm actually making a difference towards this one cause, as opposed to just generically donate, right? So I would always go back to what Jasmine was saying, is about like, what is your potential donor most interested in, right? Are they, are they worried about their future? Is the campaign focused on the future, right? Is the campaign focused on, again, you can choose to focus on fear or you can choose to focus on positivity, but you could focus on for example, things like the political climate that's happening right now, or the uncertainty, and wanting to know, do you want to help secure a safe future for us in Canada, or for your youth, our young people? It doesn't mean that you're targeting parents necessarily, but I think that's important. The other one is something that Jazz mentioned as well, I think, which is like quantifying it. So like X number of trees planted, X number of waste diverted, right? X number of students being educated, X number of school gardens that are being built. People want to know, like, we are on a mission to build 200, school gardens, let's say, or we're on a mission to double the amount of students that are impacted by this. That's really exciting. I think that's something that people can get behind, and they can understand that. So yeah, so to answer your question there, from my perspective, people want to know, like, hey, if I give you my money, what good is going to happen here? What's going to the outcome be? And people's number one fear is that it's either not going to matter, not going to make a difference, too small, won't do anything, or that it's going to go into overhead costs and operations and feel like it's not actually contributing to an outcome. And neither of those things are going to be true in the case, if you're a well-run organization with a mission, and you're very efficient with what you do. So look at that, those two concerns, and try to figure out how you could really get people excited about what their individual gift is going to do. Jazz, do you have any thoughts on that? Suggestions to figure out the best value prop for the campaign?
Yeah. Well, I will just continue on the capacity building part, because I'm actually trying to really advocate for organizations to be more openly honest about like capacity building issues within the organization, because I think that's something that a lot of donors are really disconnected from, or just general public, before they make a decision on who they're gonna invest their funds with, is understanding like it takes real people to build real impact, and we need to have solid teams that feel supported and aren't burnt out. And those are conversations I feel like this like new emerging community of donors, specifically because we're seeing a lot of like the Gen Z and younger millennials now starting to give, because they're in well-paying jobs, they're starting to build families and homes, and they are looking to give back on the things that they really value, and have obviously lived through their entire life. They've lived through the climate crisis, so they are primed. So I think it's really important that when we think about our larger campaign goal, so even if there is like operational costs, or funding programs that might be even volunteer run, or maybe it's trainings, etc., whatever those kind of cost items are that amount to that larger fundraising goal, it's considering, okay, well, who is our audience that's most excited about funding capacity? Who's our audience that's most excited about funding? Like they want to see more young leaders in environmental justice, and connecting kind of like the end results of what happens when they do donate to the individual that's most aligned with donating to that cause. So for example, let's say every year there's, this is like a random stat, but I'm going to assume that there's like every year there's at least like a couple hundred kids that go on to do incredible other things in their community. They become like young leaders, advocates in their community for environmental justice, potentially start their own projects, etc. Like they get excited, they get inspired, they go on to create deeper impact. So if we were able to connect some of those stories and those faces and those lived experiences of those individuals with people who have money, have disposable income to provide during a given season campaign, and they see themselves in that story, amazing. Or potentially, I was a burnt out ED for many, many years. Like I am always willing to support executive directors and teams with building capacity, whether that is working with them directly or volunteering my time to support with AI automation and helping them with their processes and scaling up, or directly donating to make sure that like, hey, we really need an event manager because this is the kind of outcome that we are estimating in the next year. We can raise this much money if we were to do XYZ events. I'd be like, absolutely, take my money. So it's really, again, that's like a very specific example. But once we get really clear on who exactly those donor segments are, and really the vision that they want to see, like we're already building it through, and sometimes it's hard to like build into one concrete story because there's so much impact, right? So we can say like X amount of gardens built or X amount of this built, but often it's like the actual stories of the individuals that come out of these programs and the impact that they go on to make that kind of go tenfold. How can we connect that story to the donor? And then kind of, again, it gets a little bit more complex because it's complex. It's a little bit more funnel building. Obviously, it's getting really specific on the types of stories that we're telling and connecting them to the right donor. But often when we niche down into exactly the core outcomes of like, maybe we have like 6 personas, and trust me, I'm working with organizations who have many, many personas, and we have to get really, really specific about these funnels. But the more specific we get and the more we understand their exact needs, the more outcome we see in terms of donations, like quantitative and qualitative outcomes. And often, if we're not sure where to start, the best place is to interview your donors. Like persona interviews are one of the best ways to get the exact words, terminology, the information that you need, the type of buyer's journey, donor's journey, that makes sense for that persona, and then replicating that. Literally go and build it. I think a lot of people will take that information and they're like, oh, what can we do with this? Literally replicate it and iterate on it, because if that's the story that you're seeing across the 5 people that you just interviewed, you see all the same trends. That sounds like something that you definitely want to bet on and build out a campaign around it.
I love that. I think that's so important to customize and go straight to the source. If there's any other questions from anyone who's attended, sorry, let me say that again. If anyone has a question here, please feel free to submit that in the chat. We're going to wrap up shortly, but I wanted to just kind of suggest a few kind of questions that you can ask during the planning stages of your campaign. Just kind of expanding on what Jasmine was saying. First, we'll answer the question here from Laura, which is, what would you suggest to help our holiday giving campaign stand out and to help us break out of the usual campaign that we do every year? I would love to know, I think so would Jasmine, what is the usual campaign that you do every year? Feel free to type it in or to come off to be able to share that with us. I think that's a really important question for us to answer. And to help the holiday giving campaign stand out, the first thing I will say before you jump in, Laura, thank you, is brand it. Don't just call it the holiday giving campaign or our fundraiser, right? Like name it, give it a big theme. And so that people are seeing it and they're seeing every social post, every email, people are talking about it. They know it's this campaign, right? As opposed to just the name of the fundraiser. So go ahead and tell us what exactly you've done in the past.
Hi. Okay. Well, first of all, I work in development and I'm not the person in charge of this campaign, but I'm certainly a big part of doing it because I'm doing a lot of in-house calling. So we are doing some like internal fundraising calling. but a lot of it is through third-party phone calling company right now. So I would say like they're probably going to be doing like just like end of year calling campaign. So I think that is the main way we do it. We do it by email, and then we also do calling. So I think that's generally what T is like very familiar with fundraising. They've been doing it for like 40 years. But I myself, I'm pretty new, and I'm noticing that we're that I think that there's some room for improvement, and that we could be maybe changing things up a little bit. And yeah, so just curious, like, given that's what we're doing right now, if you have any suggestions. I hear you about maybe branding the campaign, so that's kind of interesting, and I don't know if we've really been doing that.
And just to clarify,
Mm.
the organization is Toronto Environmental Alliance, correct?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
just to make sure
Yeah.
as well, and I wanted to make sure Jasmine was also up to speed on which organization. So thank you for kind of sharing that. It's funny that we have kind of eco schools and Toronto Environmental Alliance on here. I think that's great. I think making your mission clear is super important. Obviously, you're focused on Toronto. So there's a lot of people and advocates for all type of improvement in Toronto when it comes to different organizations, civic groups, volunteer groups, community associations. Like I'm just thinking about all the people that you could go to with this and say like, hey, we are here to promote a greater Toronto. We actually like to partner with other community groups, individuals, companies in the city, so that we can be your voice and make sure that we pursue, this mission of promoting a greater Toronto, right? Um, so I would make that super clear. That being said, yeah, if there is a way to kind of come up with a brand for this campaign and really naming it, you know, that is time based, I think that would be really helpful. Because it sounds like the fundraising that you've done in the past is your organization has done in the past is more just like reaching out on a one-to-one basis, correct? Right. So then in this case, it's more about like how can we get advocates from the city as a whole? And I do think there's a great opportunity to partner with local businesses and associations that really align with this, but give them an ask. Like we are looking for $100 donations from community foundations or community associations, and we're looking for whatever it is, $30 donations from this number of Torontonians to reach our goal for 2026. Like this is what we're trying to do. People kind of want that action, right? As opposed to just, okay, I'll give you some cash, but I don't know exactly what's going to happen. The other thing you could do is if you are doing events or resources and tools, which I think that's the kind of stuff that you do. I know you do like a lot of advocacy work, but if you're able to also have people contribute to those. So like we're looking to host this specific series of workshops or this program or this event, right? We need to raise X amount of dollars for this, and we're looking for your support to actually make this particular initiative or event a reality. I think that really helps people to be like, okay, they need $30,000 for this workshop or this event series. I'm happy to contribute towards that because I know that it will actually make a dent. When someone thinks of the cause of like, oh my gosh, greener Toronto as a whole, that could take billions of dollars. Who knows, right? They really want you to help boil it down a little. So that's what I would
Mm.
suggest on a top
Make it
level.
acceptable.
Yeah. Is there anything else, Jazz, that you would say given the organization?
Well, is there a specific project or program that you fundraise for during this time? And sorry if you are, I don't think you already answered that, so just clarifying.
No, because we're an advocacy organization, we don't generally like fundraise for a specific project or campaign. We do have our annual fundraiser at the end of the year that brings in like the most amount of money, so we have all our sponsors and all our donors for that. So that's like a separate thing. But as far as just like end of year calling, it's often just like we're asking for one-time donations, we're asking for like monthly conversion, and it just in general. So we don't really have like a project or campaign that we're, asking about.
Okay. And what does the fundraiser look like that you do with your sponsors and partners?
It's just like a big event that we have, and we gather like sponsors throughout the second half of the year to where like it culminates in this fundraising event.
And is the general public invited to this event? Who comes to the event?
Yeah, it's the general public, it's our partners, it's our community, and our donors. So everyone
Okay.
invited, yeah.
And do you have a large volunteer community?
Volunteer, it's actually has been quite small to non-existent. I actually just launched volunteer program myself, and I'm going to be bringing in onboarding some volunteers next week. So we're working to expand that. That has been non-existent for quite a few years. Yeah.
Okay, perfect timing. I would double down on the volunteer program you're trying to build and actually have a lot of fun with it. So like, okay, I'm answering your question very specifically. Like, how can you break out of the usual and do something that's really going to get people's attention? Have you been following the Mamdani campaign in New York? The Mamdani who's running for mayor?
No, I haven't.
Okay, I highly recommend that you check out his Instagrams. Let me see. Daniel, can you pull one up? The Mamdani campaign.
Yeah, I was literally thinking of doing that right now because he's been, it's a very fun campaign. So give me 1 second here.
It's super, super fun. It's all user-generated content from volunteers. And it's just so like, it's obviously a lot, like it's kind of silly and like it's kind of, it's in alignment with his messaging pillars. Like he doesn't take everything so seriously, but he's also there to get the job done. He's very against, he's really cracking down on, oh gosh, sorry, it's getting to be 9 o'clock. Everyone, what's the word?
Okay.
The corruption. That's what I'm trying to say. He's very much for, supporting the idea that, New York is built for a multicultural community, et cetera. And he's had really, really funny campaigns like, again, I'm just giving these for context, just so that you understand. Like one Instagram was like baddies from Mamdani, and it was like supermodels from New York that are like wearing his t-shirts. And then there's like another one that's like billionaires, was it billionaires for something? And it's like, it's so silly.
They got really, but they got like really, and like the graphics are very fun, and like they got really specific on these issues, right? And he went niche into like he wants like he's campaigning on free buses, for example, or freezing rent, and so each of those kind of has like its own thing that he can go with. Obviously, again, it's different because it's a political campaign, but just making it fun and very relatable. Like this is what we're affiliated with. This is what's happening. I think that's gonna really help because it's an advocacy organization is kind of an abstract concept to the average person, as you know. So tying it to that would be really helpful. And honestly, putting out some educational content and really recapping the massive amount of things that you've done. Like I looked at the media releases on your site and there's like how can you show like there's stuff about blue boxes, there's stuff about energy, there's stuff about incarceration, sorry, incineration, not incarceration, there's stuff about transit. Like how can you kind of show this like montage of like all these things coming together and being like these are things that you care about, Toronto, like here's where you can take action, right? Anyways, we do have to wrap up, but thank you so much for your questions. Thank you so much to everyone for sticking around. And Jasmine, appreciate all the on-the-fly consults and ideas. What's coming up, Jazz, that you want to mention?
Sorry, I just put in the list, and make sure everyone goes to your email list. Like own your media and get everyone on there because that's where you can nurture them. I want to stress that like tenfold. Coming up, honestly, especially because I know there's a lot of small teams in the room. Especially this season is wild. It can be chaotic. It can be very stressful, and I want to make sure that leaders feel like they're also getting their time and energy back because the season is also important to be with family and enjoy your time. And I don't want it to be as stressful as it always usually is. I highly recommend that you do come out to our AI for Impact workshops. It's a two-parter. Daniel's going to be diving deep into the messaging pillars piece, so really supporting with getting really clear and aligned with the type of messaging you want your organization to be bringing to your incredible community, specifically as we head into the holiday giving season. And I'm also going to be supporting you with a follow-up session around how to leverage custom ChatGPTs, projects, leveraging AI to support you with really buying back your time and energy when it comes to campaign building, copy, all the goodness, so that you can focus on the strategy and the partnerships and the relationship and the impact, and less about being in the day-to-day that's really needed to make sure that communications and processes are all streamlined. So if you're looking to really optimize using AI without having to invest $1 million and hours and hours of your time and make it really accessible, please join us this October. I can't stress it enough. We've seen so many quick wins for organizations, and we want to help you do that, especially because we're late. It's October on Wednesday, so we want to get you ahead as soon as possible.
Thank you so much, Jazz. I put the link in the chat, and we'll send up a follow-up email to everyone here who joined. Thank you so much, and we will see you on one of our next sessions. Have a great rest of your day or weekend.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.